Hi, I'm Elaine. I hope you're well and your family's doing great. Thank you for joining me for this great recipe that I'm about to share. And this is a pumpkin roll, and we will be utilizing some pumpkin that I made from a little pie pumpkin. And so if you've not seen that short to see how did I get this pumpkin puree instead of getting it out of a can, then please do check out a short that I did and upload it called Pumpkin Puree. There is a part 1 and a part 2 to that. But let's go ahead and get started. I have my ingredients here on the counter. Take a look at the ingredients list and everything that I have for the cake portion, as well as the cream cheese filling that's going to fill the inside of the roll. This recipe is going to utilize gluten-free flour. So this is a gluten-free recipe. It is not keto, meaning I'm not using the almond flour. So being vegan and also watching the sugars that are going into the body, I am using a sugar alternative. You can use your favorite choice that you like to bake with. I use a variety of them. I'm still trying to find one that I feel like is a great substitute without that aftertaste. So make your choice as to what you like as far as a sugar-free substitute. I highly do not recommend, and I don't know if they have any baking varieties, but any sort of aspartame or anything saccharin or anything like that, that is super harmful to the body. So basically looking at sugar substitutes like monk fruit, or I know the new one is allulose, and I have tried it. I do like it, but I'm still not sure because it ends with ose. And I typically will say steer clear of any sugars that ends in ose, such as sucralose, fructose. We don't want those types of sugars, so either, but there's good in one hand and bad in the other. So sometimes just trying to make the perfect decision for you and your house. Let's get started. I'm going to take my 3/4 cup of gluten-free flour, and I'm just going to add it to my bowl here. I'm also going to add basically all of my dry ingredients together. So that's going to be the cup of sugar substitute. So we're going to get that in there. The sugar substitute brand that I'm using is King Arthur's baking sugar substitute. I'm also going to add in, and I have a 1/2 teaspoon of both baking powder as well as baking soda. So I'm going to get both of those in there. I always just like to add my salt right with that sort of baking powder and baking soda, just to get it to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do for those 2 ingredients. And then we also have some cinnamon, and I have a 1/2 teaspoon of that. And I also have a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. We're just going to stir this together. You really can't tell, but you can kind of see the spices kind of mixed in together. So now that is just a nice blended dry ingredient bowl. We're then going to take the egg, which is flaxseed that I have combined with water, and allowing it to sit for 5 to 10 minutes is wonderful. It almost gets that sort of eggy-like consistency. When I go to pour it into the mixing bowl, you'll get an idea of that consistency. And we're basically going to mix it together with the homemade pumpkin puree that I have here, 2/3 cup of this. Let's go over to the mixing stand now. we're just going to make sure that that's blended nice and well. I'm then going to start adding in my mixture of dry ingredients a little bit at a time. Should you think the flour mixture is going to kind of poof out of the bowl, it's always great if you have a little like protector, a splash guard for your mixer, to go ahead and add that to it. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of let that start mixing. And then I'm going to go ahead and start adding in the flour mixture. I am going to stop it for 1 second here. I want to do just a little stir to be certain it's not just sticking on the bottom. Doesn't appear to be so that's great. I think that is great. We will stop here, go back over to place the mixture into the prepared jelly roll pan that I have. Now the jelly roll pan I have lined with wax paper. I have also greased it with vegan butter, and I've also put some flour that I kind of spread onto that pan, if you can see that there. So I'm going to take our batter. I'm just going to clean off my paddle here. And if you want, go ahead and sneak a taste right now. Now's the perfect time that if you think you're missing something in your batter, maybe you'd like to add some vanilla or some sort of a flavoring, or maybe you think it needs to be a little bit sweeter. Hopefully not. But, you know, whatever it might be, if you think you need to add an additional ingredient, now is the time to do it before it bakes. Okay, so I'm going to take this. We're going to go ahead and start spreading this onto the pan. The one thing you want to do is just try to make sure it's as level as possible. But there we have that here in the pan. We're going to place this into the oven at 375 for about 20 or so minutes. And of course, it being a gluten-free flour, it may take it just a little bit longer to cook. So we'll see, but it's pretty thin. So start checking it at the 10-minute mark, the 15-minute mark, and you can kind of calculate as you see how yours is cooking in your oven, as all ovens may be different or cook faster or some a little slower, but just keep touching it and to see if it's sort of springing back for you. And then that way you will know once it completely springs back, it is done and you can take it out of the oven. We're then going to allow it to cool, but once we get to that step, I'll definitely demonstrate it. Let's set the timer and I'll see you in a minute. While the cake portion is cooking in the stove, there is a couple steps that we can go ahead and get ready to receive that roll. The first one is to prepare a dishcloth for receiving that cake. So you want the size that's mainly for drying dishes. You want it to be pretty thin. At least I like for it to be pretty thin. This is the first time I'm using a colorful dishcloth. This was from my sister, Mrs. Binaural Eats, so thank you, sis. But for some reason, I always feel like I have to use a white dish towel. Do you guys feel that way sometimes? You have certain things that you have in your mind that it has to be white. I don't know why I think that, so first time I'm using a color. So let's go ahead and look at how I'm going to start this portion of our recipe. So here's my dishcloth. I'm just basically going to place it on to the countertop, and actually, I guess I may just go ahead and use the other side of it. I think it's just a mental thing, guys. I usually like to try to start my cake so that the edge is right near or on the edge. I don't want too much of this because we're basically going to roll it up to get it into just the state of being rolled and accepting that rolled position. And so I don't want too much of the towel on the inside of that inside roll. So I'm going to kind of, that pan was about this size. So I'm just going to kind of start sprinkling some powdered sugar onto this towel. If you've not seen my other video on powdered sugar as far as vegan or sugar-free, basically what you do is just take your sugar-free substitute and you're going to place it into your blender and just blend it until it basically powders. But it's not like you're going to leave the blender and walk away. It's going to happen very quickly. You can add like a little bit of tapioca starch or starch to it, cornstarch if you want to, and that's going to help with the thickening properties as far as if you're making like a icing or frosting or something like that. But that's pretty simple and easy how you're going to do that. So if you're trying to stay sugar-free and, trying to kind of watch the sugars in the body, that's what I would do. Let's see. And just to be safe, we'll skirt some of that out here. This was a 1/4 cup of sugar, and we're just kind of spreading it along. And I'm sorry, this was powdered sugar that I just described that technique for you. So I know the vegan or the sugar-free powdered sugars are quite expensive. So that's a way, if you already have that in your home, it's just a super easy method to make sure that you have powdered sugar without necessarily spending so much money for it. And I'm not kind of liking this crease right here. So we'll see how that behaves once I get my cake onto it. Okay. So that is how we prepare the towel for our cake. And I think that's pretty good. So I'll stop right there. I love the extra edges for the wax paper. We're just gonna slowly turn the cake down over onto that prepared pan, and it's so hot. I'm really not gonna shift it now, but what I wanna do is go ahead and I'm going to start rolling it up. We had a little extra powdered sugar, but that's okay. We're going to take a wire rack and we're just going to lift that onto that rack. I'm gonna do it right on that side, and we're just gonna let that cool that way. So it's going to basically cool in the rolled shape. So that's going to help when we add the cream filling to it and roll it back up. It won't then at that point break on us. It should not. This is actually, I believe, my first time using a gluten-free flour for this recipe. For the gluten-free flours, it did take just a smidge longer to cook, so maybe about 15 to 17 minutes. Usually with regular flour, it's going to take about anywhere from like 11 minutes to 13, pushing 15 minutes. So about the same cook time because it's so thin. I could have also lowered the temperature for the gluten-free, maybe to 350 versus 375, but I think it did quite all right at that temperature. While we're waiting for this to cool, let's head back to the mixer and let's make the cream filling for this delicious treat. So here we have vegan butter that was allowed to soften a bit. So we're going to put that in here. I am using the Mayokos brand for this, but there are many varieties that you have that you can choose from. And that is 6 tablespoons of vegan butter. I've allowed the cream cheese to reach room temperature. And so I'm going to take an 8-ounce container of it. And I'm going to also include this into our mixing bowl here. I have 1 cup of the powdered sugar. And then I also have 1 teaspoon of vanilla that we're going to add to that. I'll go ahead and get my paddle onto the mixer here, and let's give this a stir. Okay, so with vegan products, you don't want to overmix. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here, just clean off my paddle, and I will give a look inside of the mixer so you can see what that looks like as well. There's our cream cheese mixture. Now we have a little bit of wait time until the cake is cooled, and we then spread the filling into it. So I'll set my timer for about 10 minutes. We'll come back, check on the cake, and if it's ready, we'll add the cream cheese, roll it back up, and it will then be placed into the refrigerator to make sure everything cools down nicely together. We're back. It took about 20 minutes. It's still a little warm to the touch, but that's okay. I'm going to lift it off of the wire rack, place that aside, and I'm going to start unrolling this. Ever so slowly. Great, and it did not stick. So and you can see right here that piece, it just wants to go ahead and roll. That's great. We're gonna add in the cream cheese. I'm going to get that right up inside of that area there. And I try to keep it a little away from the edges as far as the long edges. Just because I don't want, when I go to roll it up, I don't want it to kind of like spew out. And I'm actually doing this a little bit warmer than I guess I have in the past because it is melting the icing, and you can kind of see that, but that's okay. I'm gonna do this super quickly and then get this into the refrigerator. And I'm also going to leave a little bit away from the short edge in the back, just because it's going to, the cream cheese is going to smush a little bit. And I don't want it to pour out of the back side of it. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. So we're gonna, let me stop smoothing it and start rolling, right? Okay, so I'm gonna roll this up, and I really want it off of my, yeah, see it's starting to smush out of the sides. I'm just gonna try. And if it sticks to your, sheet here, what that's telling you is you didn't have enough powdered sugar down. I'm going to kind of roll this back like that to get that off of there. I did a little cheat that I didn't tell you about. I put some plastic wrap like on the bottom there. And as I roll that around, I'm going to start pulling that plastic wrap around it. I'm going to roll that off of my sheet here. And it's a little messier than normal because I started with it a little warm. We're going to roll that up, and we want to get that nice and tight. There we go. And I'm going to wrap that to get it around the edge there. I'm going to do the same thing on this side here, and roll that back over. We're going to get this into the refrigerator, and we're going to allow it to sit for about an hour, and then we'll come back and unwrap it. There we go. I wish I had a loaf pan that was the correct size for this, that could kind of just hold the sides in as well. And usually my saran wrap is a little bit tighter than I made it this time. But with that icing kind of coming out, I want to get this in the refrigerator right away. I do like that it's a wider roll this time. If you didn't get the saran wrap as tight, you can get another piece of saran wrap and pull it tighter. You can also take something like a thermos just to kind of place next to it to just kind of help keep it in its position. We're going to sit this into the refrigerator for a minimum of 1 hour. So we're back. It is nice and cold, and the cream cheese filling is firm to the touch. I'm not ready to plate this onto like a platter to give it more of that sort of design appeal. But I am going to just unwrap it so you can take a look at it. I do have a knife here just to cut a little piece to have a little taste, but shh, don't tell my son. But I want to just unwrap this, and I'm going to probably get another piece of clean saran wrap and then wrap it again, and I'm going to wrap it just a little bit more tightly. But I will dispose of this saran wrap there. But this gives you an idea of how that looks. So you've seen a pumpkin roll before. I'm going to, this end is just kind of spilling out. Let's see if I can do a nice smooth cut where you can't tell that I've cut. And I was thinking about using a bread knife, but I thought that might tear it just a little too much. So I just have a utility knife or more or less like a slicer knife. And that's where all of that sort of cream cheese spilled out. If I flip it to the other side, that gives you a look of that sort of roll. Let me pick that up here. Can you see that? It's hard for you to see. I'll try to get that camera in there to get a look at the end. But this is the pumpkin roll. I'll have a little bite. It's very good. Gluten-free flour is going to give it a little bit more of a chewy texture than you'd get if you used all-purpose flour. If you are watching the gluten, I'm trying not to eat a lot of gluten, a lot of breads, so this would be perfect and you would be happy for having an option for a gluten-free dessert. Should you be able to avoid the gluten and the carbs and the gluten is just as high as the carbs and all-purpose flour. So if you wanted to just go ahead and use the all-purpose flour, definitely do. You're going to get more of that cake-like texture with it, but it is yummy. And I think it would be a great thing to serve for your Thanksgiving dessert or anytime you want that taste of pumpkin and a little bit of spice. I hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving, a wonderful Christmas season. I will be here baking and cooking away. Don't stop joining me. I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now. So I'm going to go ahead. I have my spatula here, and I'm just going to kind of try to, there we go, slide it right onto my saran wrap. Just slightly try to move this guy, and if he doesn't want to move, I don't move him. But I thought I'll move this out of the way. You can kind of see the roll there, but definitely with that cut, you can see the roll there. On the other side, the icing or filling was coming out a little bit. So I just kind of took that knife and just smoothed it right on the end. At the time of serving it, I may do as I did this side, just kind of cut it off a little bit. If you want that roll a little bit tighter, you can just pull that saran wrap onto it to make it more of a round roll. But when you do place it on a flat surface, the bottom does tend to get flat. So unless you have a special container that can hold it or you have something to support it on its side to give it more of that round, you're gonna have that little flatness to the bottom of it. But as I mentioned earlier, when it comes time for dressing it up, do add a little sprinkle of powdered sugar just for that festive sort of look. And again, dress some fruit around it as well, and everyone's going to enjoy. I'm super excited that you could join me today for this video. And if there's anything that you'd like to see, don't hesitate to include a little comment below, and I'll see if that will be my next video. Otherwise, I hope you will like. That's very important. So please do give me a like, share, and also subscribe if you've not done so as well.